Good morning. In my work, I hear people tell me about their difficulties, their problems, often tragedies, struggles in life, and it's hard to hold all of those in my mind as time goes on, but from time to time, somebody tells me something that the impact of it stays with me. One such incident was a man who came one day and said he was very frustrated. He had a child I knew that was a healthy child in every way except that his child was born with only one hand. And he told me that he was very frustrated because he all week had been calling piano teachers, and he could not find a piano teacher who would teach a child with only one hand. And that struck me deeply. Eventually, he did find a teacher who would take on this task. But I'm not really heaping blame on those piano teachers as much as I'm asking myself, why do we find it hard to adapt to a difficult or a different task like that? I'm sure it was difficult for teachers to say, well, I have my instructional books. I learned to teach the piano a certain way. One hand, that would require me to go outside of some kind of comfort zone of my job, and I just don't know if I could do that. Have you ever been asked to do something that you don't feel adequate to tackle? And I think it is a natural thing. I'm not sure it's a good thing or a healthy thing, but it is a natural thing to say, I wouldn't know how to do that, or I wouldn't be good at that. I want to tell you another story this morning. Last year about this time, I was given a gift of a book, and I like to read books about people's lives, memoirs, and this book was written by a woman named Alice Wong, and it's called Year of the Tiger. And if you get a chance to read that, I highly recommend it to you. Alice Wong was born as a normal child, but soon after her birth, there began to be some problems, and around age 8, she stopped walking. She had something called spinal muscular atrophy, and slowly every muscle and function of her body began to deteriorate and decline. By the time Alice got to high school, she was in a wheelchair. But she went to school and she enjoyed her experience, and she signed up for drama class. And she loved it so much. It was so interesting and she enjoyed it so much. So at the end of that year, she signed up to take second year drama. And when she went to school the following fall and she got her schedule, she was not in second year drama. So she went to her counselor and said, I wanted to take drama 2, second year drama. And the counselor says, well, you'll have to speak with the teacher about that. And so she went to the teacher, same teacher she'd had the previous year, and said, I wanted to be in drama 2. And the teacher said, well, in drama 2, we're going to be doing pantomime, and you wouldn't be able to do that. And so, as much as she said, well, couldn't I do pantomime of somebody sitting? No, the teacher said, that just doesn't fit with what we're going to do. And Alice really, from that moment, she decided that she was not going to be denied an opportunity to have a happy life because of her disability. And she actually has been an activist for disabled people, incredibly so. She formed an organization called the Disability Visibility. And her passion is that people who have disabilities shouldn't be hidden away to where they're not a part of society. Now, Alice's disease has progressed, and she is today, it was originally said by the doctor she would not live past 20 years old. She is now 49 years old. Would you show that first picture for me? This is Alice. Alice is an activist, and in her book, you see how difficult it is for her to live, but how many people step up to help her live. She attends conferences, she's written several books, and founded several organizations. Thank you. And I will tell you another story about Alice in a moment, but again, I go back to the drama teacher. I try to be understanding. Teachers are pressed to do many things. I get that. So this is not about that teacher, or it's not about those piano teachers. It makes me ask myself, is this what I have done so many times? When presented with an opportunity to assist or help somebody, do I say, I don't really know how to do that, or I wouldn't be the best person to do that? I was in, just to show you how this seems to be sort of a default response of people, I was in the pharmacy one day, and there was a lady in line in front of me, and it was obvious that she was blind. She had a walking stick, and you could tell she wasn't, making eye contact with the clerk. So she put what she wanted to buy, and the clerk, a young person, said, okay, that'll be so much. And this woman said, I want to use my credit card. And she said, okay. So she just pointed at the clerk pointed at the machine where you swiped your card. And of course, the woman didn't see that. She didn't know. And so I said, kind of guided her hand, said, right here. She paid for her things. And then as she was leaving, she said to the clerk, could you tell me where I could find a certain item? And the young clerk said, yes, it'll be aisle 7 on the right. And again, very patient, the woman said, would somebody be able to help me to find that? As I listened to that, again, not faulting that young person who was the clerk, but why do we do that? Why is it hard to take her by the hand and say, here's the machine where you swipe your card, and certainly I'll go with you to help you find that product? As I tried to look at this, and I thought, well, I'm supposed to be the psychologist. I should be able to explain this behavior. I think part of it is we tend to want to do things that display our mastery at something. You ever ask somebody about something, they say, well, I'm not really good at that. And it's a funny thing. People will say, do you play tennis? I do, but I'm not very good at it. Do you play the piano? I do, but I'm not very good at it. What is that about? Because the object of any of these things is not to display your proficiency. There's, in many cases, to have fun, to enjoy it, or to benefit someone else. But we tend not to want to do things that would look like we failed at it. Maybe it takes too much effort. It just would be too much trouble to try to meet this person's request. Some of you know I used to live in an Asian country, and so I speak another language, Mandarin. And so there's an agency in the area that from time to time when they have clients who don't speak English, they will call me to help them with certain services, usually therapy and counseling. But one day they called me and they said, we need to do a psychological evaluation of this person, and they're a Mandarin speaker, so could you come and be the interpreter for the psychologist? I said, okay. Now that is not ideal, but I said, well, we can do that. Well, when I got there, it was even more interesting but complicated than that. The psychologist was a young woman from Gallaudet University, and she was deaf. And she could speak, but she could not hear. So here's how the evaluation went. The psychologist spoke. I told the Mandarin-speaking person what she said. The Mandarin-speaking person told me the answer. I told it to the sign language interpreter who told the psychologist. And then again, and around we went like this. After I did that, I thought, I was deeply impressed that this agency and these people were all willing to go to this length to provide this service, not only to this woman who needed this evaluation, but for this psychology intern from Gallaudet who wanted to be able to share her knowledge and gift with someone else. And so we all went together to make that happen. But so many times we think it's just too much effort, it's too much trouble. I suppose that we sometimes just don't appreciate the perspective of another person. One of the things I studied in graduate school was about how our ability to take someone else's perspective grows with development as a person. Little children, 4 or 5 years old, aren't able to take someone else's perspective. How do you think Sally felt when you took that toy away from her? They're not able to feel that, right? But as we grow on, hopefully we can understand someone else's perspective. But always looking at someone else's perspective, or from their perspective, you might call that empathy. That's not pleasant, because then it asks us, well, what can be done? And I think another thing is that sometimes we just become hardened. We see a lot of problems around us. We don't know what the answer is. And I just don't want to think about it. I don't want to see it anymore. I remember a few years ago when we were having the crisis, which we still have at the border, of people coming over from South America, and what to do with these children. There were some people down there that held up signs that said, "Not my children, not my problem." Remember that? Not my children, not my problem. Well, that's true. It wasn't their children. And I guess technically it wasn't their problem. But is that a hardness that comes when we see whatever the issue, whatever the problem is, we begin to say, I can't fix that, so I don't care. Maybe not that I don't care, but I won't think about it. Sometimes it requires being creative. I really admire my own daughter. She is a teacher in Arlington for students aged 12 to 25 who have various disabilities, serious disabilities. She's an art teacher. Some of them can't use their arms. Some of them can't speak. And she told me one of them is blind. And I said, how do you teach a blind person art? And she's such a positive person. She says, oh, there's ways to do it. You know, so many times we say, I like the kind of person who says, we'll figure it out, right? We'll find a way. We all know the story of the man down in Alabama many, many years ago who contacted the school for the blind. His name was Mr. Keller. He said, I have a daughter, little girl. She can neither hear nor see, and we cannot do anything, and we can't find anybody to help her. You know that story? Helen Keller? The interesting thing was, so the teacher at the Perkins School for the Blind says, I have a student that I would like to send to you. Now, Ann Sullivan, who became Helen's teacher and lifelong companion, was herself blind most of her life. I didn't know that until I started reading about this. She had a very difficult childhood. Her mother died when she was young. Her father abandoned them, and she was pushed around from place to place until she finally asked to go to the school for the blind. She wasn't 100% blind, but almost. At that school, she met a student who was blind and deaf who taught her how to communicate by spelling the letters in your hand. And that's what she used to teach Helen. And we know that story. Helen Keller went on to win a Nobel Prize, I believe. They are both buried side by side at the National Cathedral in our nation's capital. Two amazing people. But I think about who was it way back there that taught this first student to do this? We don't know their name. Who was it that said there's got to be a way to communicate with this child? So the question, how can I be a person that's willing to go beyond what's comfortable, what's convenient, what shows my ability? Now, I'm going to tell you another story about Alice Wong because I was so moved by her story. And by the way, her book is called Year of the Tiger. She is of Chinese descent, and you know the Chinese 12 animals, sometimes we call it the zodiac. If you've been to a Chinese restaurant, you can see which one you are. I'm the year of the sheep. Alice was born in the year of the tiger, and she is fierce. She is a force to be reckoned with because even though she has all of these disabilities, and requires so much to function. She is relentless in advocating for disabled people. Many years ago, during the Obama administration, there was a conference held at the White House for various members of society that advocated for the disabled. Now, Alice was invited to go, but by that point, traveling on an airplane with all of what it took to keep her functioning was just too much. So she didn't think she could go, but somebody thought of a way for Alice to go. Will you show me that second picture? Alice was at the meeting as a robot, I guess, that showed her face, and she went around talking to the other participants, and here she is talking to President Obama. Isn't that something? And we do have, thank you, we do have a lot of people that work tirelessly in our country to make life rewarding for people who have disabilities. How can I be that kind of person? Not just about people who have disabilities, which is a huge challenge, but about people who we encounter every day that we might could help, but we say, I'm not really the one. Now, if somebody needs brain surgery, I'm not going to volunteer for that. But most of the things that people need help with are ways that we could possibly help. First thing is constantly push ourselves to take the perspective of someone else. What if that were me? Another suggestion is I tried to look at this was start with an aspect of a task that you can accomplish. Maybe we can't see ourselves solving the whole problem, but maybe I can do this. You know, if you're trying to untangle a huge knot, start with the one loose thread and see if you can get that loose, right? And then maybe we should ask God, the universe, life, whatever is important to us or however we would frame it, ask life to give us these type of opportunities. Bring me opportunities to go beyond what is comfortable, convenient for me. You know, I've found that when somebody really needs us, it's often not the most convenient time. And that's an excuse we often give, like, well, you know, today I have to go to this place and that place. And it's usually not going to be the most convenient time. But don't discount the importance or the impact of even your less than ideal intervention. I think this applies here. Many years ago, again, an incident that made a profound impact on me. My wife and I lived in another country. We were missionaries. And we used to sing together. I played the guitar, and we would sing for various functions. And one day, some of the young adults in the church where we served said they were going to be going to this school for the deaf, and would we go with them and sing? And my first reaction was, well, they can't hear. So that's all we can do. But they said, yeah, but it would add to the program if you would go. So we did. And there was a speaker, and of course it was all interpreted into sign language, and which we didn't know. And by the way, sign language differs from language to language because languages have their peculiarities. One thing I found there was interesting, for those of you who know Chinese, that in Chinese there's a word how. It can mean many different things. It can mean good, it can mean hello, it can mean okay, yes. And so the sign for how was this. So by the end, I was doing this all over, you know. Yes, 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 hello. So the speaker spoke, it was interpreted, and we sang a couple of songs. And so afterwards, there was question and answers. And these questions were coming from the students who didn't speak. They were using sign language, and the speaker or others were answering the question. And then as they asked the questions, they would, of course, interpret them for us. And one student's question was directed toward my wife and me. Would the couple be willing to sing another song? And I didn't expect that. What it was that they experienced, I don't know. Was it the rhythm of the guitar they could feel? Was it our mouths moving in harmony that they enjoyed seeing? But I say that to say what you think may not make much of an impact on someone's needs may be more of an impact than you realize. So will we be a person who says, when faced with an opportunity, we'll figure something out, or we'll make it work, or we will start with what we can do and go from there? Maybe our less than expert effort may just be what is needed to help a person move to the next place. This week, let's be alert for opportunities to go beyond our comfort zone to be what someone else needs.